figures. Resource. actionfiguresresource.com.
Welcome back to the Action Figure Resource Podcast. I'm Alex Shaw, and I'm here with Bill Murphy, founder of FreshMonkeyFiction. Hello, Bill.
Hi, thanks for having me on.
It is a pleasure. We're going to talk about the Amazing Heroes line of action figures, which at the time of recording is in the middle of a Kickstarter campaign. The factory production and funding channels are all ready to go, and all that's needed is their goal of at least 30 grand to proceed. Now, it's best described as a collection of comic book Golden Age superheroes modeled after the early 80s Kenner and Toy Biz style action figure lines.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. We're kind of got a 80s retro toy feel that we're kind of going after, stuff that sort of Kenner and Mattel were doing back in the 80s, so that we're kind of trying to capture sort of that essence in our line.
Okay, among them you will find such characters as the Black Terror, the original Daredevil, Stardust the Super Wizard, Champion of Mars, Silver Streak, and perhaps the most famous of the group, Captain Action. First appearing in Nador's Exciting Comics number 9 in 1941, running through to 49, Black Terror, with his super strength and limited invulnerability, fought crime with his sidekick Tim. Their skull and crossbones emblems clearly designed to strike fear into the hearts of superstitious cowardly criminals, hence their name, the Terror Twins. He was revived in the Alan Moore series Tom Strong in 2001 and at several points in the following years. Now, Bill, this is a very specific combination of characters from a faraway era rendered in a style from many decades after their heyday, which in turn is from many decades before today. So you're going to have to tell us a little about what inspired you growing up in a way that eventually led to this idea.
I'm a big comic book fan. I was big into comics in the 80s, and I was lucky enough to have a cousin who owned a comic book store. So we would always go over there, and he would give me a bunch of free comics. And some of the comics that he gave me were these old Golden Age books that I had. I mean, again, I was a big Marvel fan in the 80s, but these Golden Age books kind of resonated with me a little bit. They were older, right? And so and a lot of my friends didn't know who they were. So I was like, oh, I got these really great vintage comics that, at the time, everybody thought were maybe worth something just by the fact that they were old. But, weren't really. But the characters were really fun, and they were different. And some of the names were familiar, like Daredevil and that kind of thing, even though they were very drastically different characters. That's sort of how I got kind of familiar with a bunch of who these guys were.
Silver Streak was created by the great Joe Simon, one of the founders of the Golden Age and co-creator of Captain America with Jack Kirby. Only the second comic book character with the power of super speed, with the Flash preceding him by 2 months in 1940. I have to read his origin verbatim because it's just too perfect an example of the writing of the age. In 1940, a taxicab driver was hypnotized by a mysterious Swami into working for him as a race car driver. All of the Swami's previous drivers had been killed by giant insects sent by a mad scientist named Dr. Catan. The cab driver was killed as well, but the Swami used his mystical powers to bring him back to life, after which he gave the resurrected driver an injection of a secret fluid that gave him super speed and the power of flight. Motivated by a strong desire to make the world a better place, he donned a colourful costume and fought against crime, Nazi spies, and the Claw, calling himself Silver Streak, after the race car he was killed in.
And that kind of stuck with me, even to today. And, there's been kind of relaunches of some of these characters in comics over the years, from Alan Moore to Dynamite, that kind of thing. And I've just sort of always loved sort of these characters. They come from a little bit simpler of a time. And when it came to sort of wanting to maybe do my own action figures, I always thought about maybe possibly trying to get these guys out there. And there hadn't really been any figures of these characters before. Some statues had been made and so forth. So I was like, let's try to give these characters a new life, so to speak.
Some 24 years before Stan Lee and Bill Everett's version graced Marvel's pages, the original Daredevil appeared as a guest spot in Silver Streak, issue 6, from Leave Gleason Publications in 1940. Graced with exceptional athletic abilities and skills with a boomerang, he fought Hitler, much like Captain America, in a comic that predated America's actual involvement in World War II. As with Black Terror, his career spanned the decade, and he has been revived in modern comics since passing into the public domain.
a lot of these guys fought gangsters and Nazis at the time. They had a few different super villains from robots, that kind of stuff.
So this would have been like 40s sort of era,
yes,
that kind of thing.
Kind of from the 40s. Stardust has more of a mystical background. Daredevil had a couple of different origins, that he was scarred as a child and then was taking revenge from his death of his parents. A lot of this classic mythos kind of appeared throughout these various characters. Silver Streak had a weird origin where he was a race car driver, and then Swami gave him superpowers. So there's a bunch of weird different origins throughout these characters, which are really fun.
Created by Fletcher Hanks, Stardust the Super Wizard appeared first in Fox's Fantastic Comics issue 1 in 1939. He was blessed with super strength, flight, and invulnerability, much like the similarly magic-imbued Superman, Captain Marvel from Fawcett Comics, whom Stardust predates by 2 months. Unlike those two flying strongmen, Stardust, an immensely wise alien from an unnamed planet, had the power to have whatever power the narrative required him to fight crime, such as retarding rays, thought recording, and turning into a human-sized star.
And they're sort of out there for people to read. I got to give a little props to the Digital Comics Museum, because they have all these adventures available for free to download, and it's that you can go there and read these stories and download these comics and read about these different guys. And then Captain Action is kind of different. Captain Action kind of falls from a little later era in the 60s, where he was kind of the first superhero action figure, and he's from a different age, but he kind of has that same kind of vibe and feel. So I approached the Captain Action guys, and they were excited to kind of bring him into the line as well.
Captain Action, standing out from the rest of the group as a character created in 1966, as opposed to the 40s. Also, unlike the others, he does not originate in a comic, although he did end up in comics of his own. Instead, Captain Action was a toy created by Stan Weston, the man who conceived the original G.I. Joe figure, along with Hasbro. Captain Action, made by Weston along with Leisure Concepts, followed a similar articulated action figure with interchangeable outfits style, but unlike Joe, he had access to all sorts of superhero costumes such as Spider-Man, Superman, Batman, Captain America, Nick Fury, and Flash Gordon. Now this was fairly revolutionary. Even now, only toys like Lego span both Marvel and DC, and it was a motif that Mego would follow up on. Although the Leisure Concepts line ran for only 2.5 years until 1968, it remains fondly remembered, with the outfits being rare and prized collector's items. And since 2005 there's been a resurgence of interest, with Captain Action Enterprises releasing new merchandise, including statues, toys, comics, trading cards, collectibles, apparel, and a new comic. Okay, so what have been the biggest hurdles so far?
Well, the biggest hurdle so far for me is just getting the prep for the line. It's the research and into the factories, and making sure that if this thing does fund, that we can actually produce the figures with the quality and in a time frame that people expect. The creative stuff has been great. I mean, it's been I wouldn't call that a challenge, because it's just this back and forth creative style between me and our sculptor, and just talking about what characters we want to do and how we should get them portrayed. So that's kind of fun. I wouldn't call it challenging, but the big thing is just making sure your ducks in a row to get this Kickstarter going, and making sure you've done all your research. I think that's important to the people that are going to back the project, that you didn't just conceptualize this idea one day and launch the Kickstarter the next.
Yeah. So, I mean, how long does it actually, when did it actually start off?
Well, the prep for this particular Kickstarter has been a year. Mm-hmm. This line has been sort of in a conceptual form for the last 5 or 6, believe it or not. It started as kind of a 6-inch articulated thing that we wanted to do, and then sort of went into more of a 4-inch model, kind of going after maybe kind of the animated series look from a lot of the toys from maybe 10 years ago, and
Justice League Unlimited, that kind of thing.
Justice League, that kind of stuff. So, and then we're going to do a post, I think, next week, maybe the week after Comic-Con, that actually will kind of go through the history of development of this thing.
Cool.
It's developed for a while, and so I'll show different prototypes that we did and different designs, but all centered around kind of the golden age stuff, because it's something I've always it's always resonated with me, and something I've always wanted to do. But the last year has been the big push from making a decision to kind of go after this sort of 80s Secret Wars like kind of style.
Gotcha, yeah.
And then moving towards that direction.
I mean, the fact that this came into being 6 years ago, that was kind of before Kickstarter really took off. So it must have been quite heartening to see, like, we can actually do this.
Well, yeah, that's what it always came down to for us. It was always, how are we going to get this done? Because the cost of manufacturing are expensive. So when Kickstarter kind of happened a few years ago, we started taking notice, and I started looking at what was being done out there, and then realized that maybe we can do this as a Kickstarter, because it's this line of characters is very niche. Not a lot of people are familiar with them. Obviously, Captain Action has the biggest fan base that we have.
Oh yeah.
But I really wanted to kind of get these characters kind of back out there for people to kind of see and read their original adventures, and I just love them so much. And I thought maybe hopefully it would resonate with people as well. So you could either take the risk of trying to do this yourself, and so what a lot of companies are doing these days are kind of going towards the crowdfunding platform to see if there's an audience out there that these things would resonate with.
And so what's been the best aspect, if you could put a finger on, like, was there a single moment that you were like, this is brilliant?
Well, I mean, I think, really things started really coming together over the last year, between Kickstarter, the design, and we kind of made a conscious effort to put the Kickstarter out there early, like a few months ago. A lot of Kickstarters will just launch, and then that's when they'll do their merchandising or their press out to people. So we decided to kind of try it a little earlier. That has been the best part, because really that helped to inform the line when we actually launched. People would come back and say, oh, hey, I really love what you're doing, or hey, is this character going to come with this, or how about this head, or do you want to do these kind of characters, or that kind of stuff. So that the connecting with the community has really been great, as far as a creative, back and forth. It helped to inform the line when we were going to launch, to make sure that the people who did want this stuff are going to get what they were after.
So hypothetically, if you had infinite funding to expand upon this line, what would your next move be? If you can either be to make more of these, or to like diversify beyond the Mattel style?
Well, yeah, I think what we would do is, we really do like this sort of buck body sort of look, this nice clean silhouette body. That's why we chose to go that direction, and we modified it from the 80s stuff to, smaller hands, maybe, that kind of stuff. But I think we'd love to go and do a female line, like a female figure in the line. I think that would be great if I had, the unlimited funding. We'd obviously do maybe some things that were a little more diverse with the line. Like, that would be our next steps anyway, is doing like different accessories or different character looks overall. Maybe do like a larger scale monster, that kind of stuff, but sticking with sort of the same feel.
I was going to say, actually, with infinite funding, you could obviously acquire a lot more licenses. But what's it actually like out there in the landscape for royalty-free or public domain heroes? I mean, how many feasibly could you actually bring in without actually having to pay out for licenses?
Well, if you tap into sort of the golden age era that we tapped into with sort of these public domain heroes, there's lists of hundreds of them out there, which is great. I mean, there's so many. I mean, it was hard to come down to which 3 or 4 we wanted to launch with. And so we've got, plans for future waves that still kind of go after those golden age heroes. Yeah. So there's a lot out there in terms of that. But, the characters themselves aren't really in kind of the public consciousness. Everybody's more aware of all this licensing stuff, which is also why we got Captain Action. I mean, we explored some other licensing as well. It just didn't work out. A lot of the licensors are kind of worried about the crowdfunding platform today. Hopefully that will change in the future. You had a great Kickstarter for Skeleton Wars that the guys from October Toys,
I remember that.
And that was kind of a licensed thing, a license to prove, just like Captain Action is for us. But we reached out to try to get a few other licenses, but they weren't really interested because of the platform. And we were still going to do the public domain heroes, but we wanted to kind of get some other pulpy kind of heroes out there. But so again, hopefully that will change over the next few years, because I do think the crowdfunding is really the great way to go for smaller companies to kind of get out there. And the license stuff does resonate, obviously, with people. So it's good to kind of get that stuff out there. And, some of these bigger companies may not want to do some of these smaller licenses. So this is a good opportunity, I feel, for some of those licenses to get out there for people maybe a bigger company wouldn't do necessarily.
Since part of this is to encourage people to back you generously, what are some of the stretch goals or some of your favorite ones that you've got in the works?
Well, we've got some really good ones beyond just our standard set of figures. Some of the larger ones include you can get your own custom character done. We've got a really fun one that includes sort of more of a vintage-looking card back. That's a very limited run, but you can get the characters on those kind of card backs. And we've got stuff all the way up to getting your own exclusive Amazing Heroes figure if you'd want to. Then you could sell them on your website or wherever and distribute them yourself.
Okay. And so what's next on the agenda?
The next big thing for us is Comic-Con. So Comic-Con is next week. The Captain Action guys are doing a panel on Thursday, so we're going to be there to talk about the line as well and do some promotion at the show. We don't, unfortunately, have a table or anything, but we will be out there, and we'll have a bunch of people in FreshMonkeyFiction t-shirts. So if you see us, say hi, and if you see us and post a photo on and tag us on any social media, we're having a little contest to win a bunch of stuff, from original sketches by Tom Fowler, who's doing the comic book art on the back of the packaging, to toys from some of our other friends who are helping support the line. So if you're going to the show, please look for us. If you're not going for the show, we're going to have another contest actually in a couple of weeks. That's going to be kind of a design your own Amazing Heroes contest, where you can kind of win a proof of concept action figure, that kind of stuff. So we're doing stuff throughout the whole campaign. We're going to be for the next 30 days or so. So we encourage people to kind of check us out and follow us. That'd be great. Okay, so that is Amazing Heroes. Go along there to back the project. At this point, it ends in 36 days. But once it's done, if we can do like a little epilogue to actually add to the end of this video, and we'll see how you guys have done. Okay, great. That sounds great.
Okay, folks, as promised, we are back post-Kickstarter completion, and the total stands with a target of 30 grand at 31,994. What a lot of people don't realize, myself included until I really looked into it, is that if a Kickstarter doesn't make its total, no one actually ends up paying anything into the pot at the end. Basically, if you'd made $29,999, well, if you made that much, I'm sure one of your friends could give you an extra $1. But
right.
if it hadn't hit that mark, basically Kickstarter then don't requisition the funds from everyone who's pledged. So it really is. It was down to the wire at that one. So it's a case of, if you really want something to go through on Kickstarter, folks, back it. Absolutely back it. Don't wait, because basically early adopters are people who keep the projects alive.
Yeah, that's why we chose to use Kickstarter, because that the money that we try to raise is the money that it takes to make it, and if we don't have it, we can't make it.
Yeah. Now, I checked in the last day or so, Bill, and you were still a way off, so I was crossing all digits for the win on this one. What were those final hours like, and what were you doing at the time?
Well, I was kind of sweating it a little bit. We were really close, and so I was hoping that we would make it. So we were I was doing as much as I could to get out there on social media, and just kind of especially the last week of the Kickstarter. In the last few hours, we got retweeted by a few well-known comic book artists, and it really brought us over the edge. So that really is kind of really what happened. We had, it's the power of social media, right? So it's, like Eric Larson, Mark Wade, and a few other people, I tweeted them and said, hey, we could really use a retweet to kind of get us there. And they were nice enough to do that, and it kind of brought attention to the Kickstarter that I didn't really get before. So that was great.
How was Comic-Con, by the way?
Comic-Con went great. Yeah, we got to go to the Captain Action panel, meet a bunch of people, and got to actually meet Ed from Captain Action Enterprises in person for the first time. So that was great, and it was a good show. It's a larger show, obviously. And we had a few people that kind of recognized the T-shirts, so that was great because we wore T-shirts around and got to connect with them and a few other creators, which was great. Yeah, it was a great show.
Fantastic. So what's next now that you've basically you've hit your total and you're proceeding onwards?
So the next step really is to finish collecting our funds. We're in that middle of that right now. Few people are still outstanding, so we're trying to wrap that up, and then we're going to do some surveys out to the backers, and then we'll be able to open up for additional orders for people who either couldn't make it in time for the Kickstarter or folks that made it a part of the Kickstarter that want to do add-ons and those type of things.
Cool.
So that'll open up for probably about a month. And then on the production side of things, we're having conversations with the factory and moving things along that direction. The other thing we're doing is we didn't quite make our 2 stretch goals of Champion of Mars and Silver Streak.
Okay.
And fans are really wanting those figures, so we're trying to figure out a way to be able to offer those figures before we go into production on the rest of them. So we've got some things in mind that we'll hopefully can announce within the next 6 weeks, and with some help from some other folks, we might be able to get those figures out there so people can order them.
So there you have it, folks. Another successful Kickstarter and a new line of action figures brought into being purely based on fan enthusiasm. Bill, thank you so much for talking with us again, and we will let you folks know when the figures are available.
All right, thanks so much, Alex.
And where can people go to find out more?
So they can go to, the best place to go is to FreshMonkeyFiction.com, and there's links there to all of our Twitter and Facebook, as well as the Kickstarter.
And just to recap again, because obviously getting people reading the comics digitally is going to be a huge bonus to actually raising awareness of the characters. Where was that place that you mentioned before?
Yeah, Digital Comics Museum has tons of, and you can find a link to them in the Kickstarter as well. Okay. And they're also going to be posting some of our updates, actual comics from some of these characters with the collaboration of Digital Comics Museum. So they have tons of comics up there that are all in public domain that you can download, everything from superheroes to westerns, all sorts of stuff. So I really encourage people to kind of go there, and they can learn more about these characters as well as get some other great comics for free.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for being so generous with your time, Bill. It's been great talking to you.
Oh, no, great. Thank you for having us on. We really appreciate it.
Cool. And you can follow us on Twitter at ActionFResource and check out the rest of our YouTube channel for all kinds of goodies like collector guides, interviews, histories, and top 10s. I am Alex Shaw, and this is Action Figure Resource.
Action Figures Resource. ActionFiguresResource.com